everybody, welcome to my homestead and welcome to my channel. In this video, today, this article on churchnews.com caught my eye. It's called A Historic First for Temple Dedications and Rededications and the Senior Church Leaders Who Do Them. Okay, so I didn't know exactly how to organize this one, but I think we're actually going to start. So we're going to read part of this, but I want to start with this Wikipedia article here for some context. Okay. This one is list of temples of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, and at the beginning of it, there's a history section, and there's a few things here that we've talked about before on the channel, but I want to bring up again. Okay. In the 1980s, Spencer W. Kimball directed the church to build smaller temples with similar designs. Okay, we've talked about that before. David A. Bednar, he was talking to a bunch of, I think it was CES people. I did a video on this talk that he gave, but he talked about how revelation is actually a process. It's like they don't receive revelation and then instantly implement it, and sometimes it comes in stages. And so the idea for smaller temples originally came to Spencer W. Kimball, and a lot of times people credit President Hinckley with that idea, but what President Hinckley did, I'll show you right here. Church President Gordon B. Hinckley, who passed away in 2008, also accelerated the construction of temples through the use of even smaller standardized base design. In 1998, when there were 51 temples, Hinckley set a goal to have 100 temples in place before the end of the year 2000. Okay, so I think the reason why he gets credit is just because he made them even smaller, and he announced 100, or had the goal to do 100 by the end of the year 2000. Now, when I read this, I found that interesting because, as most of you know, and we've talked about on the channel, President Nelson just completed his announcement of 100 temples with this last conference where he announced 17 temples. And again, there's that number, 17. He announced 17 temples to complete a total of 100 announcements of temples since he became president in 2018. So he currently has the record for any given prophet of the number of temples announced. So he's at 100. President Hinckley was at, I want to say it was like 73 that he announced total. Wait, was it 73? Maybe it was 78. I'm not sure. I think it was 73. Anyway, that doesn't matter. So anyway, I find it fascinating that President Hinckley had this goal to have a total of 100 temples in place by the end. That's not announcements. That's talking about the total number of temples being at 100 before the end of 2000. And then President Nelson, even though I can't find anywhere that specifically says it, it seems that maybe he had the goal of having 100 temples announced. I say that just because, you know, this last conference, he's at 100. And an odd number was used to bring us to 100. It just seems like the type of thing that you would do when you're setting goals. A lot of times you pick numbers like 50, 100. You know, you think in terms of tens or 25s, quarters, or so like 100. You know, that's a common, I think, goal in certain scenarios. And so I find that interesting if he's doing something kind of similar to what President Hinckley did. Now, I don't know if either one of them knew or know when the second coming has happened. Please do not bring this up. Joseph Smith said that the prophet would know before the Lord does anything. He draws that from Amos 3:7, and there's a quote from him that was in what's it called? The Sunday School Manual when we were doing the teachings of the prophets, where he says that, because everyone's like, well, no man knows the day or the hour. Well, Joseph Smith, according to him, and according to the Sunday School Manual, where he was quoted as having said that was a principle back in those days when he was alive on the earth. But in the future, the prophet will know before he does things. So anyway, the point is, I don't know if President Hinckley wanted to do this in preparation for the second coming, specifically, like if he had the idea that it might be in the beginning of the millennium, or if he knew that this was like the first phase of temple work where we really need to get things in gear. So I'm going to make sure that there's 100 temples ready to go to prepare for the second coming. And now we have a second round with President Nelson announcing 100 temples. I don't know. I would assume that's probably going to continue as we move forward to future conferences. It's unclear if he's going to survive. Excuse me, survive until the next conference. I actually have a thing pulled up. Let's see where it's at. Unless I closed out of it. No, wait. Wait, is this it? No. Oh, I may have closed out of it. No, here it is. Okay, take a look at this. I've brought this up before on the channel. So we all know that President Nelson just passed up President Hinckley in terms of the oldest living prophet or apostle. So the only one that's ahead of him now is David B. Haight. Okay. David B. Haight lived to be 98 years old, as you can see here on this top line. David B. Haight, he was an apostle. And President Nelson currently, at the time of this recording, is in the number 2 spot. If he makes it to his next birthday, which is in September, then he will tie with David B. Haight. And then if he goes beyond that, then he will become the oldest apostle or prophet of this dispensation. And here you have a list of all of them. Here's a list of all of them. President Nelson is all the way up here, and the only reason why he's here at the number 3 spot is because they have him. They have it like in alphabetical order because they're just doing it by months, not days. And so Gordon B. Hinckley alphabetically comes before President Nelson, but in reality, he should be ahead of President Hinckley. So, I don't know if maybe he had the goal to have 100 temples announced before he passes away, or before some significant date, but let's continue. Just keep that in mind as we continue. Okay, between the brief building period from 1998 to 2001, 38 of these standardized temples were constructed and dedicated, meeting Hinckley's goal by having 102 dedicated temples before 2000 closed. During Hinckley's service as president, the number of temples more than doubled from 47 to 124. So that's pretty incredible. Okay, let's come back here to this article that I wanted to go over. It says, I'll zoom in. It is by President Nelson's direction that his first presidency counselors, President Dallin H. Oaks and President Henry B. Eyring, and all 12 apostles, have each been assigned to preside and pray at least one of the 14 temple dedications or 13 temple rededications that have occurred since January 2018 or are scheduled and announced through late 2022. Okay, so he became president of the church January 2018. I mean, getting ahead of myself. And he wanted everybody, all the 15, to participate in dedicating temples. Now, that's interesting because here, this is on Mormon Wiki. This is a more simplified version. First, I went to Wikipedia here. That's where I came across this that we just read. And this has like more details. But here on Mormon Wiki, it's a little bit easier to look at. In this third column right here, this shows you who dedicated the temple for each row. Okay, so it has the temple, dedication date, and dedicated by. Okay, so let's look at some of these names. I'm just going to kind of go through it. So in the very beginning, you have like, the very first one, Daniel H. Wells. I don't even know who that is. I'm sure that he was an apostle. Logan Temple, John Taylor, and then after that, Lorenzo Snow, Wilford Woodruff, 3 by Heber J. Grant, 1 by George Albert Smith, a handful by David O. McKay. So already, I mean, can you see that there's kind of a pattern here? With the exception of the St. George Temple, all these other temples have been dedicated by presidents of the church. Moving on, we have the Ogden Temple dedicated by Joseph Fielding Smith, and then after that, Harold B. Lee, and then a bunch by Spencer W. Kimball, and then we have Marion G. Romney, and he was in the first presidency, if I'm not mistaken. And then after Marion G. Romney, look at all these Gordon B. Hinckleys. Starting at number 21, the Atlanta, Georgia Temple, from 21 all the way down to 38, all of them were dedicated by President Hinckley. Now, this was before he became prophet. Let's see, when did President Hinckley become prophet? 1995. Okay, 1995. Let's go back here. So you can see all these that are in the 80s. So at that point, he must have been either in the first presidency, or I know for a time he was like a counselor, or like a secretary to the first presidency, or something to that effect. But anyway, President Hinckley, Ezra Taft Benson. Here's a Thomas S. Monson right here, and this, of course, would have been before he was president. Howard W. Hunter 2 times, and then after that, it's like nothing but President Hinckley, with one exception right here of Boyd K. Packer, the Regina, Saskatchewan Temple, 1999. Here's a few: James E. Faust, Thomas S. Monson. So you can see that there's not like a wide variety of people that have dedicated temples. All these have been either presidents of the church or seem to have been in the first presidency, but just a ton by President Hinckley. We're still going down. President Hinckley, Thomas S. Monson. Okay, starting with, it looks like 135, the San Salvador, El Salvador Temple. We have Henry B. Eyring, and then after that, Dieter F. Uchtdorf, Thomas S. Monson, Boyd K. Packer. So now you start to have more, some different people still in the first presidency, or in the case of Boyd K. Packer, I guess he would have been the president of the Quorum of the 12 at this time, I think. But then you just see kind of a mix of Dieter F. Uchtdorf, Henry B. Eyring. Here's a Dallin H. Oaks right here. Okay, now you have President Nelson, but this is when he was Elder Nelson. Okay, and this was 2016, the Sapporo, Japan Temple, at the time, Elder Nelson. So this was already kind of rare right here, because now I don't know, at that time, maybe 2016, yeah, I guess he probably would have been a very senior member of the Quorum of the 12, if not the president. So maybe that's not too unusual, because we had Boyd K. Packer up here in 2012, so he was probably president of the Quorum of the 12. Okay, so, and then here you go. So then he becomes president. In October 2028, he dedicates the Concepcion, or Concepcion, if you're doing it the Spanish way, Concepcion Chile Temple. So he did that, and then a year later, then he does the Rome, Italy Temple. The Rome, Italy Temple. So these are the only two that he's dedicated so far since he became president of the church. And then you have an incredible variety of people. You have Dallin H. Oaks, Del G. Redland, Ulysses S. Soros, David A. Bednar, Neil L. Anderson, Ulysses S. Soros, Ronald A. Rasband, Garrett W. Gong, and M. Russell Ballard. So that is pretty fascinating that all of a sudden it's not just between just like a handful of people. It like spreads out to the entire, everybody, to all the apostles. It's also worth noting that he wanted, I guess, to be the one to dedicate the Rome, Italy Temple. And we all know that the Rome, Italy Temple, that was when he said that the church had reached a hinge point. So I guess it would have only been proper that the prophet be the one to oversee and dedicate that dedication if it was a hinge point. So that's interesting. Okay, so let's go back here. All 12 apostles have each been assigned to preside and pray at least one of the 14 temple dedications or 13 temple rededications that have occurred since January 2018 or are scheduled and announced through late 2022. Of the 11 temples dedicated during his tenure and the 3 upcoming dedications scheduled over the next 2 months, President Nelson has taken the lead on only 2 of 14. The first was the Concepcion, Chile temple, dedicated October 28, 2018, during his South America ministry and while visiting Santiago, Chile, and Concepcion. The second was the dedication of the Rome, Italy temple, with all 15 members of the First Presidency and Quorum of the 12 participating, and briefly all together during the 3-day dedication period of March 10th to 12th, 2019. That was definitely a very, very, very special occasion. And here's a picture of them outside of the temple, in front of it. And it is a beautiful temple. I love it. Okay. All other dedications since 2018 have been or will be done by a First Presidency counselor or apostle. Such is also the case with recent and upcoming temple rededications as well, with the possible exception of the Washington, D.C. temple rededication, which is scheduled for August 14th and is still today without an assigned presiding leader. Now, that's interesting because you would think that the Washington, D.C. temple is very important. It's one of the more, they're all important, but I mean, you know what I'm talking about, historically speaking. So it'd be interesting to see if President Nelson will be the one that rededicates the Washington, D.C. temple. If it's not him, I wouldn't be surprised if Dallin H. Oaks does it, because he's the one with the legal background, and maybe that's part of the Lord's plan. And because a lot of us have talked about how President Oaks might be and probably will be very instrumental in setting up the world government during the millennium. You know, President Nelson may pass away, and then President Oaks may be the prophet of the second coming, and may be the one that's instrumental in setting up the government. So it'd be fitting if he rededicated the Washington, D.C. temple. And I will say that they're making a pretty big deal out of this. If you go to the church newsroom, they're still talking about it. Here you have U.S. senators, representatives, and Supreme Court justices visit the Washington, D.C. temple, House of the Lord. That's one story. Here's another one. What have invited guests said about the Washington, D.C. temple? I feel like every day I come on here, there's always some new story. Here's one right here with Wolf Blitzer from CNN. Well, I think he's still at CNN. I don't know, because I don't watch mainstream news anymore. How the Washington, D.C. temple open house is creating neighbors and friends. Yeah, there's been more. Let's just check really quick. What's the other one? Let's see. The Deseret News site. Yeah, see it right here. It's the main temple. Video. How temples connect Latter-day Saints with the Savior. And then the picture here, the thumbnail, it's the Washington, D.C. temple. Here's another one. What church leaders said about temples during the Washington, D.C. temple open house. So it seems like this is some kind of event that's going on right now. Maybe they're just, really taking this opportunity. It's a rare occasion to allow the world to see it, to tour it, and it's in a really important location. It's the capital of the United States. So it is a big deal. But anyway, it'll be interesting to see who rededicates it. Let's see. Okay. As it is, President Nelson's dedicating 2 of the 14 temples accounts for 14.3% of available dedications. Of other past church presidents and the dedications of the church's 170 currently operating temples, 7 presided at 100% of the dedications during their tenures, while Brigham Young didn't dedicate either of the two during his leadership time. 3 others had no temples dedicated. Over the past half century, President Gordon B. Hinckley is credited for 81.8% of the temple's dedications during his presidency. President Thomas S. Monson, 40%. President Ezra Taft Benson, 22.2%, and President Spencer W. Kimball, 19%. So, and we saw that here, right? Let me just I'll do a search for Gordon so that it highlights it. Gordon B. Hinckley. Okay, so just look at the highlighted areas on this. You come down here, okay, you have a mix of people there, and then it's just like nothing but Gordon B. Hinckley. He just like, yeah, that's definitely 80 whatever percent it was. It's a lot. It's incredible. Okay. In the same Sao Paulo interview, President Nelson singled out Elder Ulysses Soares, the apostle who had dedicated the Fortaleza, Brazil temple 3 months earlier. It marked the first time the Brazilian native and most junior member of the Quorum of the 12 Apostles had presided over a dedication. That's interesting. Here he is here. What makes President Nelson's sharing of the temple dedications and rededications with the First Presidency and the Quorum of the 12 Apostles even more impressive is that it comes in 4.5 years' time. Nearly 2 years went by without any of those key temple events because of the pandemic and its many restrictions. From when Elder Ronald A. Rasband dedicated the Durban, South Africa temple on February 16th, 2020, which was a month before things really kicked off in the U.S. with the pandemic. So from February 16th, 2020 to October 31st, 2021, Elder Garrett W. Gong dedicated the Winnipeg, Manitoba temple. 20 months passed without a temple dedication or rededication. So almost a full 2 years, just 4 months shy of 2 years. That's a long time. So this is happening at lightning speed, I would say. This is happening at lightning speed. Now, why is that the case? Why is it happening at lightning speed? Well, let's look at a few things here, okay? So first, let's look at the tracker, okay? And I singled out the phrases that seem to have had clustering around the late 90s and the early 2000s, the turn of the millennium. Well, you can see the term millennium here is really dark in the year 2000 and 1999. So that makes sense. They're definitely acknowledging that we're going from one millennium to another, and what's supposed to happen in the next millennium? The start of the millennium of Christ's reign. So it makes sense that this would be a big topic at the turn of the millennium. Here we have in 1996, important, imperative, never been more important, never been more imperative, whereas before that, you don't come across it very often at all. Just a lot of white space. And then in 1996, important, imperative. And then you have hasten that picks up in the 90s and especially in 1999. Whereas when you go back in time, it comes up, but it's usually pink or light pink instead of red. So there's a spike in these years as he's announcing the smaller temples. This is where we start kind of like, here's the first clustering of rising generation. It doesn't really take off until about 2007, until current, but there was kind of like a 90s cluster of rising generation. So they're thinking about the generation that's coming up that will most likely meet the Savior. The 11th hour, okay, you go back in time, it comes up, sometimes in 1975 3 times, and then all of a sudden in the year 2000, it's brought up two times. You have to go back to 1987 to see it before that. So a big long period of time goes without them saying 11th hour in General Conference. And then it suddenly shows up in the year 2000. 11th hour. And then it comes up one more time in 2012. Running out. Time is running out. Remember, there's only 2 times that's said in conference. One was in 2019, where President Nelson just flat out says at the end of his talk, please get your testimony and come back to church. Time is running out. But before that, the only other time that's been said in conference was in 2005. So keep in mind, this is after all that temple building and announcing. Okay, a couple years go by. We're in 2005. And this is President Eyring, and this is what he says. He says, keep this in mind that all these temples have just been built and have been announced. Okay, so look at it through that context. I think that's maybe what he had on his mind as he said this. He says, some of those words are crucial to understand. The great and dreadful day of the Lord is the end of the world. Jehovah, the Messiah, will come in glory. The wicked will all be destroyed. We live in the last days. Time could be running out for us to do what we have promised to do. And what have we promised to do? Well, after that, he goes into talking about Elijah and how Elijah brought back the sealing power. So he's talking about temple work. The church had just gotten done constructing all these temples, having 100 temples constructed by the year 2000. 5 years go by, and President Eyring is giving us this warning about, hey, time might be running out for us to do what we need to do before the second coming. Now, think about that. That was after these 100 temples, once we had reached 100 temples in the church. Now, we have President Nelson, who's announced 100 more within just the last few years, which is astounding. And he seems to also have had the goal of 100, having 100 temples. So do you get the sense, or do you get the feeling that maybe they really are serious about getting temple work done as much as possible before the second coming? And at this point, it may already be too late. Now temple work is going to continue. It's going to continue into the millennium. That's one of the main activities and things that we'll be engaged in during the millennium. So there's not going to be a stop of temple construction. If anything, it's probably going to increase, and that might be what we're seeing now. It may be that President Hinckley brought us to 100 temples so that we could do as much as possible before the millennium. And it may be now that we're just getting ready for the actual work that's going to be done during the millennium. Or, maybe we still have time and they just want to try and get as many of these constructed before the second coming. I don't know, but it's probably one of the two. So this is one of the only times that someone says in General Conference that time is or could be running out. In kind of a way of warning. Okay. I can't remember what we were doing. Oh yeah, going back here to the spreadsheet. So time running out. Bunch of temples constructed. A few years later, hey, we might be running out of time from President Eyring. Or at the time, I guess it was Elder Eyring, I think. I don't know. Now look at this. This is the first time that we have a bunch of, it's a wonderful time. It's an incredible time to be alive. It's an exciting time. If you go before that, back in time, you don't see it. It's not set in the 40s. It's not set in the 50s. It's not set in the 60s. One time in the 70s, exciting time. One time in the 70s. In the 80s, 2 times, it's an exciting time. And then 3 times in the early 90s, and then all of a sudden, in the late 90s and early 2000s, it's a wonderful time to be alive. It's an incredible time to be alive. It's an exciting time. I think that's associated with all the temples being constructed. And then as we move forward into the future, it's a lot more frequent that people are saying it's a wonderful time, a great time to be alive, exciting time. Okay. And then let's move over to prepare the world. Actually, I'm not sure why I have that here. Well, you can see that, no, I don't know why I include, what was I thinking? But since we're here, just look at this big space between 1996 to 2015. Just ignore these ones in the late 2010s. All of a sudden, they're saying this all the time, starting in 2015 onward, and especially in 2020, prepare the world. Okay, and then, oh, I missed another one. Okay, whatever, that's good enough. So, I think all this has to do with all that temple, all those temple announcements and temple construction that was going on under President Hinckley. Okay, I think that's the story that we're seeing right here. Okay, was there anything else here? No, you can look at the details. It breaks it down who did what. So here's President Nelson. He did the Concepcion, Chile, and Rome, Italy temple. President Oaks has dedicated the Barranquilla, Colombia temple, and then rededicated the Oakland, California, and Mesa, Arizona temple. Did a video on that about, there was a story there, so you can go back and look for that if you want to on my channel. President Eyring has done the rededications of the Jordan River, Utah temple, Oklahoma City temple. That's my current temple, by the way. The Tokyo, Japan temple. President Ballard has done Houston, Texas. Okay, these are all rededications. No, okay, rededication of Houston, Texas, and Raleigh, North Carolina, and then he dedicated the Pocatello, Idaho temple. Jeffrey R. Holland has done the rededication of the Memphis, Tennessee temple, and I think that's the only one that he's done between dedications and rededications. I didn't see his name on that list that we were just looking at. Elder Uchtdorf rededicated the Frankfurt, Germany, and Hamilton, New Zealand temples. Elder Bednar has done the dedications of the Yigo, Guam, and Port-au-Prince, Haiti temples. Elder Cook rededicated the Baton Rouge, Louisiana temple. Elder Christofferson rededicated the Asuncion, Paraguay temple. Elder Anderson dedicated the Lisbon, Portugal temple. That's my mom's home country. And dedicated the Praia, Cape Verde temple. Elder Rasband dedicated the Durban, South Africa temple. Elder Stevenson dedicated the Rio de Janeiro temple. Elder Renland, he dedicated the Kinshasa Democratic Republic of the Congo temple. Elder Gong dedicated the Winnipeg, Manitoba temple. Elder Soros dedicated the Fortaleza temple and Arequipa, Peru temple. And then here's a bunch of groundbreakings, but I'm not too interested in that. Okay, so fascinating. Really interesting stuff. It'll be interesting to see what happens with temples going forward. Are we going to see a lot more temples announced? Is it going to keep at this pace? You know, we've reached 100 now. Now what happens after 100? Does it slow down? Does it speed up? Does it stay the same? I don't know. President Nelson, how much further is President Nelson going to go? Is he going to pass up David B. Haight and become the oldest living prophet or apostle of all time in this dispensation, of course? We're living in a very interesting time. We're living in an unprecedented time. Things that have not happened before in the church. So it's really important that we watch and we observe and just kind of see what's happening in the world around us and in the church. Alright, that's going to be it for this one. If you haven't already, please make sure to subscribe, like this video if you liked it. Put your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. Also make sure to share this, and I'll talk to you guys later.